Welcome, Strongest Avenger.
What?
Yeah, Thor, you aren't the only one a bit befuddled by that revelation. While Hulk is indeed a strong Avenger, without a doubt, there is another who could very well hold the title of Strongest Avenger, at least on the page. Then again, there are probably a bunch of them on the page, but I'm not talking about all of them right now. Hercules isn't just a being from Greek mythology. He is also a character within Marvel Comics as well, and this version of the demi-god is a freaking beast power-wise, and has actually gone up against the green beast burden quite a few times in the comics. But is he really the strongest Marvel hero? How can he possibly top the Hulk? Well, in this video, I'm gonna cover a few different ways that Hercules has the edge. Then, just for funsies, at the end I'll go over a few advantages that Hulk has, just to keep things objective here. So with all that said, let's go ahead and dive right into it. First and foremost, we've got to address the elephant in the room when talking about Hercules. That being that this guy is himself a freaking demigod. Being the son of Zeus, king of the gods of Olympus, Hercules has power literally in his blood. This is a guy who was brought into existence specifically to be the champion of Olympus, the prince of power, the god of strength. So yeah, it goes beyond just lifting heavy things and throwing them. Now what is the Hulk? A guy who got blasted by a bunch of radiation. Sure, that's fancy and all that, but Hercules is the son of a god. Might not exactly be a super tangible argument for Hercules being stronger, but hey, it counts for something. Okay, but what does being a demigod really do for him? Well, for starters, he's an immortal. Like, actually an immortal. Hercules has been alive since the heyday of ancient Greece. Once he reached adulthood, he stopped aging, meaning that he is forever going to be in his prime. On top of that, the dude is nearly indestructible. In fact, it is said that he has a greater resistance to damage than pretty much any of the other members of Olympus, save for Zeus himself. The only way to really take him out permanently would be to reduce him to atoms and then disperse those atoms over a great enough distance so as to make it impossible for them to reconstitute themselves eventually. Compare that to the Hulk. Sure, he's also incredibly resistant to damage. For example, in the MCU, Banner has a line where he points out that he tried to take himself out, only the other guy put a stop to it. So yeah, he is also insanely difficult to take out, no doubt. However, as we've seen in the comics, Hulk can and does age. So feasibly, there will come a day when Hulk withers away to nothing, like all things do eventually. It just might take a really long time. But you know who will still be standing when that day comes? Hercules. So I guess Herc could beat Hulk just by simply waiting him out. Not exactly the most exciting battle, but it works. Of course, with his long life comes a ton of knowledge about how to kick some serious butt. Hercules is nothing short of a combat expert, having even invented a specific type of martial art called pankration, which is basically a combination of the Greek styles of wrestling and boxing. He's also highly skilled with many forms of weaponry. Of particular note is his skill with a bow. While he isn't exactly Hawkeye, the dude is pretty dang good with it, though he hasn't really used it much since the death of his wife, which was a whole thing that I don't really have time to get into right now. Compare that to Hulk, who doesn't really have any sort of combat training, which makes sense, since the Hulk side of him isn't exactly someone who we would imagine having the patience to study the blade. So despite the two heroes having comparable levels of strength, something which I'm going to get into soon, don't worry, Hercules here gets the edge in a straight up fight, as he is actually trained to do so and has thousands of years of experience to back it up. Speaking of how the two of them would fare in one-on-one combat against each other, there is something that would also give Hercules an edge that you might not think about, but it could be potentially huge. That being the fact that Hercules is physically capable of keeping a cool head while fighting, something that the Hulk cannot do due to the very nature of being a green rage monster. In a fight, Hercules could keep his emotions in check, allowing him to think far more rationally about what his next move should be than Hulk would ever be able to. Now admittedly, Hercules isn't always the calmest fighter. In fact, one of the biggest weaknesses about the guy is his fiery temper, which has on a few occasions gotten him into some serious trouble. However, as a rational, pseudo-human being, he could feasibly focus on this during the fight and use this to his advantage, whereas the Hulk will always be in a sort of berserker rage every single time. It might seem like a minor thing, but when you really stop to think about it, it could be a major advantage for the Greek demigod. Here's something else that you might not have thought of. Hercules is, to his very core, exactly as he is presented. He is and has always been a powerful being. On the flip side of that is Banner, who was born a mortal man, and when he isn't hulked out, is basically just a dude. A very, very smart dude, but a dude nonetheless. So what if you found a way to remove his ability to turn into the Hulk, keeping him as Banner? There have been a few different times in the comics where this has happened, with people using things such as adrenaline suppressants and emotion-altering drugs to keep him calmed down, and therefore not green and rampaging about. So you could theoretically remove Hulk's powers, rendering him effectively useless in a fight. You know who you can't do that to? Hercules. You can't use fancy chemicals to stop him from being a demigod. No amount of sedatives will stop him from being super strong or super fast or what have you. Sure, you might be able to put him to sleep, but you can't take his powers away from him. You can take the Hulk away from Banner. So that's pretty solidly a point in Hercules' favor, if you ask me. Who do you think is the richest character in the Marvel Universe? Tony Stark? Norman Osborn? Reed Richards? If you said yes to any of those, you are more than likely wrong, as Hercules just might have them all beat. Notice that I'm being very non-committal about saying if he is actually the richest or not. That's because his fortune is so vast and so undocumented that no one really knows how much money the dude has, including Hercules himself. Over the thousands of years that he's been alive, he has managed to amass quite the pile of cash. He's done everything from buying out entire bars with the contents of just his pockets, to even investing in Stark Industries back in the day, casually dropping $100,000 to help the fledgling company get off the ground. Point is, the dude is loaded. Now, this isn't a traditional measure of strength in regards to superhero-dom, but you know what they say. Money makes the world go round. So, in theory, if Hulk was coming to fight Hercules, he could pay someone else to fight for him, or invest in research into how to cure Banner of his gamma affliction. Basically, he could literally pay to make the fight go away. Something that Banner couldn't really do in return. Not that he would want to, really, since Hercules kind of enjoys fighting and all that, but you know, he could, and that's the important thing here. But you know what money can't buy, though? Fancy enchanted weaponry. I mean, I guess it probably could. I'm sure Stark has a magic weapon guy he could call if he wanted to, but that's not really the point. Regardless, that hasn't stopped Hercules from obtaining and wielding some items worthy of Greek mythology. He has some pretty awesome magical items in his arsenal. He has the Shield of Perseus, a shield imbued with the powers of Medusa herself. You know, the snake-haired lady that turned people to stone simply by making eye contact with them. Bonus points, it's made of adamantine, the metal that adamantium is named after. He also possesses the Sword of Peleus, a blade capable of cutting through literally anything, which is just absurd, but whatever. Couple that with his famous golden mace, which was made by the Greek god Hephaestus himself for Hercules, and suddenly the demigod is looking like a major threat to old Jolly Green, even when you don't take into consideration all of his other powers and strengths. What does Hulk have? Not a lot, honestly. He has used some weapons here and there, but nothing on the level of enchanted pieces from myths and legends. You know what comes with being the son of the king of Olympus? Being buddy-buddy with a bunch of other Greek gods. While he could, in theory, call them down to help him out in a scrap, that's not the specific benefit I want to highlight here. Basically, Hercules is able to call in some serious favors, allowing him to be granted a lot of benefits. Such as when Hercules was burned at the stake by Maestro, a future tyrannical version of Hulk. Normally, he would just die. You know, like pretty much anyone who was being burned alive would. Except, Hercules was able to make a deal with his uncle Hades, who granted him the ability to live on past the point where he should have perished, allowing him to nearly take out Hulk as a flaming, walking corpse. How the heck do you defend against something like that? How can you stand up against the combined might of the gods of Olympus? Answer, you can't. Not without some kind of divine intervention of your own. And Hulk might be friends with some of the members of the Norse pantheon, but even they can't help him out to that degree. Hercules has some pretty incredible stamina, meaning he can basically fight forever without needing to take a break, no matter how much of a beating he's taking. On the flip side, however, we have Hulk, whose burning rage may be able to sustain him in a prolonged fight for quite a while, more than pretty much anyone else, but eventually the Jolly Green guy will burn himself out, needing to retreat in order to catch some Z's. So theoretically, Hercules could just tire Hulk out in a one-on-one fight. keeping him going well past the point where Hulk would normally need to call it quits, and then take advantage of his opponent's weakened state. Simple and straight to the point, just gotta not get his butt handed to him in the meantime. Easier said than done, I guess. Finally, let's leave off this section about Hercules by talking about his agility. Now, in comparison to the Hulk, Hercules isn't exactly that much more agile than the green dude. However, despite the fact that he is a big, muscular guy built like a Mack truck, he is actually capable of pulling off some pretty fancy moves, proving to be far more flexible and coordinated than you would really expect. Hulk, however, isn't exactly a ballerina. He can often be described as lumbering, not really moving with any sort of finesse. Which is fair, I guess. When you're that beefy, you don't really need to approach anything stealthy or something like that. You just kinda smash. So this is a situation where Hercules gets a win, though just barely. Still though, it totally counts. Now let's look at how Hulk has the edge over Hercules. Let's start off where you would probably expect this debate to start off to begin with. Who is stronger? Listen, Hercules is by far one of the most physically strong heroes in the Marvel Universe. When put head to head on just your average day, Hercules might even be stronger than the Hulk. However, Hulk has one little aspect of his power set that not a lot of people talk about these days. That being the fact that the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets. As of the recording of this video, there's yet to be any established limit on his strength growth, effectively meaning that he possesses limitless strength. So if Hercules were to really get on Hulk's bad side, he better look out, as even the god of strength himself might soon find himself outclassed. In the Marvel Universe, gamma radiation seems to be pretty much everywhere. You can't walk 10 feet without tripping over something emanating this form of radiation. And this is something that is a major benefit to Hulk. Due to his own powers being derived from gamma radiation, access to this stuff can provide some serious perks for the guy. He is capable of absorbing the stuff, which has in the past caused him to physically grow in size. At one point, he took in the gamma radiation of several nuclear bombs at once, which caused him to grow in size to the point that he was larger than Fin Fang Foom, the giant dragon who the Avengers have tangled with on numerous occasions. He has also rarely been shown to be able to redirect and manipulate radiation, using it as a weapon in of itself. Not a common ability of his that you see all that often, but it is something that he can do. I'd like to see Hercules try that. Now, throughout this video, I've compared Hercules to the basic, regular version of Hulk that most people know and love. However, that's not the only version of Hulk out there. One major one that would give him a massive leg up over Hercules would be the latest version that we've seen within the MCU, the aptly named Professor Hulk. Basically, this is what happens when Banner and Hulk come into perfect harmony. The strength and powers of Hulk coupled with the genius-level intellect of Banner. This version of Hulk would effectively nullify quite a few of Hercules' advantages that I mentioned earlier, as it's a proper thinking Hulk rather than the mindless rage monster. I'd have to imagine that a genius Hulk could outsmart Hercules, meaning that even if Hercules outclassed him physically, he could still win out in the end. Good old brains over brawn, as it were. Now here's something that probably wouldn't come up in a fight between these two, but it's worth mentioning at least. That being Hulk's resistance to telepathic attacks. Despite what Avengers Age of Ultron would lead you to believe, Hulk is actually quite difficult to mess with telepathically. In the comics, he's been able to successfully fend off mental attacks from some of the most powerful telepaths in the Marvel Universe, including Professor Xavier and the Leader. Hercules, on the other hand, has been controlled mentally a couple of different times. It's not a common occurrence, but still. So if Hercules decided to bring in another hero to help him out in a fight against the Hulk, for whatever reason, he better think twice about bringing in someone to try to mentally control him. Finally, there is this ability of Hulk's that definitely wouldn't come into play, but it's such an odd thing that I stumbled upon while researching for this video that I figured I'd throw it in here because why not? Did you know that Hulk is able to see ghosts? Yeah, that's a thing. Basically, Hulk is capable of seeing and even physically interacting with astral forms. How this came to be came down to the fact that Banner subconsciously feared that his father's ghost might someday come back to haunt him. So, the Hulk developed this ability in order to try to keep watch, looking out for this supposed ghost. So could Hulk just randomly start developing new abilities on a whim? Theoretically, I guess it is possible. However, if they are all ridiculous ones, like being able to see and mess with ghosts, I doubt they'd be that impactful in the long run. Hey there everybody, I'm John Aljets. I made this video, and I want to know what you think. Who do you think is stronger, Herc or Hulk? Let me know in the comments below, or shoot me a response over on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to CBR for even more great videos in the future.